Hey guys, before we get started, just wanted to let you guys know if you wanted to look for Caster Chronicles singles or product or anything like that, check out the link in the description below for a happy little hug factory. They carry Caster Chronicles product and singles, which is pretty awesome for all great pricing. I really like a lot of the things they have there. They're really awesome people as well. I've bought a lot of stuff from them. Be sure you click the link in the description below so they know that we sent you over and enjoy playing. Alright, so we're here with another deck profile. So like I said, there's going to be 3-part videos. The first part was the mono orange deck. Today's going to be the mono yellow deck, and then the third video will be those decks combined into a yellow orange deck. So pretty excited for that. So today is the mono yellow deck. So we're going to go ahead and just jump right into it, and we'll start with the casters like before. So first up we have Glow Desire. So this one is target servant with an attack greater than its printed attack gains 1,000 attack until end of turn. So a recurring theme you'll notice for some of the parts of this deck is basically just making giant beefy monsters to help break through things your opponent has or defend against things your opponent has. Different things like that is just a big part of this deck. So we'll get into that more as we go along. But I run 3 Glow Desires. Next is Luna Esperanza. So draw a card if you discarded a card this turn. This helps with a servant that we run inside of here that it combos off with, as well as since there's a lot of discarding inside of this game, especially if you know your opponent runs that. If it's like the mono orange deck we covered last week, you can do this in response as well to help at least gain some momentum after that happens. But I run 2 of those. Next is Grace. It's whenever an allied jewelry enters the field, you recover this card. There's not a whole lot of jewelry in this deck, but it's a nice just sort of passive ability in order to get some extra ether if so needed. But so I run 2 of those as well. Next is Rafina Soa. Just recover target level 1 allied caster. So this helps if you need to do some combo effects, like say example with Glow Desire. You can tap her to get that 1,000 attack till end of turn. Then use this to untap her and either use that ability again or some other ability from another caster. Works really well, and especially works well inside of the dual color deck once we'll get to that next week. But because of that, I run 3 of those. Next is Twinkle Charm. I just run 1 of these. It's draw a card if you drew a card by the effect of a conjure this turn. So it's something that once again combos with another card inside of this deck, but it's not something that's too prevalent, so I only run 1 of them. Maybe I'll run more later. I think 2 ofs is a really good theme for this deck, so maybe it's just a matter of figuring out what caster I wouldn't want and then to trade off for that. Next is Ruka Arimi. Target allied servant gains 100 attack for each card in your hand till end of turn. Once again, helping with that buffing. Since there's no hand limit size inside of casters, you can have a relatively strong card potentially with it. And especially comboing it with recovering target allied caster and playing it again could be really strong. So I run 2 of those. And then lastly is level 2 of Ruki. Her abilities banish another root key, and you get to draw a card, so you just banish the one that's under it or face down one. And it also has the ability you can tap her, target allied servant gains plus 200 attack for each card in your hand till end of turn. So basically this ability, but on steroids. Unfortunately, you can't recover it with the effect of Rafina, but it's still really good one-off effect for basically 2 ether technically. If you had cards in your hand you could have cast otherwise. But it's a really nice card to have. I only run 1 of because it's not that big of a deal to have, but it's cool to have when you come across it. Next up is Conjures. So first up we have Compulsory Journey. So it's a 2 cost with quick cast. So you can play this anytime you want, with priority of course. Target enemy player banishes a servant if another servant they controlled was put from the field into a graveyard this turn. So if something died, if you killed something or they sacrificed it, or if there's a banish effect, really anything, you play this in response and suddenly they have to banish another servant. And that's a really cool effect, especially if there's no destruction. So if they introduce things like can't be destroyed or barrier or anything like that that Force of Will has, this also gets around it. So you don't get to choose, unfortunately, but if there's only 1 other servant on the field, then it, doesn't really matter. But I run 3 of those because I really like that. Next we have Magic Paper, 3 cost, just draw 2 cards. So combos with the caster we had talked about before, and also being able to draw more cards not only is good because you have more variety of things to choose from, but it also combos with the other caster that buffs based on how many cards you have in your hand. So basically you're just making yourself stronger by drawing more cards. on multiple levels. Next is Preparation. It's a 3 cost. Destroy target servant. If you do, its owner searches their deck for a card with the same name and puts it into the field. Then that player shuffles their deck. So, and this is an interesting one because it has a couple different ways you can use it. Mainly, I think the main way is on yourself. So, you destroy a servant that you control, and it goes into the graveyard, but there's a lot of bouncing effects, ways to put that card from your graveyard back into your field that we'll get to, and you're able to put it into the field again, especially strong if it has an enter effect. You're able to just do a huge combo off, essentially, and it helps with field population and searching your deck, shuffling your deck if you need to shuffle your deck to get to certain cards. It could be used on your opponent, technically, depending on the circumstance. It really just depends, but I only run 2 of those. Abolition, so this is a 7 cost conjure. Put all servants on the bottom of their owners' decks in any order chosen by their owners. So, this is really interesting. So obviously, I only run 1 of it. It's a very late game card, but it helps just clear the field. Unfortunately, it uses up all your ether most likely, so you won't be able to repopulate your field. However, depending on the game situation, this could come in really handy, especially if you only have 1 or 2 servants and they have 13. This is way more in your favor, even with the loss of ether for your turn. So it's just a break in case of emergency type of card. Next is Pillage. 3 cost with Quick Cast once again, which is really great. Until end of turn, if target enemy player would draw a card by a card or ability, you would draw a card instead. So you do it in response to them tapping for a draw or playing a conjure that lets them draw. You say, okay, in response, I'm going to pay 3, play this card. You don't get to draw that card. I get to draw a card instead. So it takes away their draw power and gives it to you, which is a pretty cool effect, I think. Next is Servant Seal. So 6 cost with Break. Break is really cool, as always. And put target servant into its owner's orb zone face down as an orb. So this is a 2-fold. It can do 1 of 2 things. You could take a low-cost servant you control, put it into your orb zone in order to help buffer against certain things. You can do it to your opponent. It unfortunately adds an orb to their life total, as you can say, but you know what that orb is. And if it's a really strong or a really high-cost servant that you need to get out of the way, then that is extremely helpful in that sort of regard. And unfortunately stalls out the game for an extra swing you got to do. But if you know you got the game, I only run 1 of because it's not something that I want to play very often. And last conjure is Compensation. 3 cost with Break once again. Put the top card of your deck into an allied orb zone face down as an orb. So this is just adding more orbs into my orb zone. I used to run more just to populate orbs for fun, but I think it's more, works better just as a one-off occasionally. You don't want to put too many cards into your orb zone because you're also losing those cards for a short amount of time, but it's nice once in a while. And lastly, we'll now move on to servants. So this is where stuff gets pretty interesting. We'll start with Double Rabbit. It's a 4-cost servant with 2000 attack, 2000 defense. However, you can discard a card and it gains 2000 attack until end of turn. And it doesn't put a limit on how many times you can do that, so you can discard multiple cards to get its high attack. So to break through really strong servants your opponent might have. So that's really cool, and it obviously combos with other buffs you could possibly give it with your casters. So it could potentially become really strong. So I run 2 of those. Next is Extravagant Necklace, another 4-cost, only 1000 attack and defense. However, it has Break. And last words, last words when it dies, you get to put a card from your hand into an allied orb zone face down as an orb. And you have to do that effect, unfortunately, is the only downside. However, helps with that orb population I talked about. Like I said, I used to have more, but I scaled it back. But I thought it was a pretty cool effect, especially with Break. Having more cards with Break is good. And so if this breaks out of your orb zone, you get to put another card in your orb zone. If you have something in your hand with Break, then that could really turn out into your favor, being able to choose a card with Break and putting it into your orb zone. Next, one of my favorite yellow cards is Ouroboros, so I run 4 of him. It's a 3-cost with Break, once again, 2000, 1000, so decent stats, especially for having Break. Enter effect, you get to draw a card, then discard a card when it enters the field. So this works with multiple casters, ones that combo off of drawing cards, and ones that combo off of discarding cards. And just having draw power is really great, I think. So I run 4 of him. Next is Pentachi. So having 1 cost servants, I always say, is really good. So he has a 1 cost, but he also has an effect. When he enters the field, you get to look at an enemy orb, then return it. So you get to have an idea of what your enemy has, so you can avoid making them draw that orb if you so choose. And especially if it has a break, or if it's something you know would really help counter against you, want to stall out till late game if you can. So I run 3 of those. Next is Split Eagle. So this is a really interesting card I run 2 of. It's a 5 cost, 2000, 2000 with last word. So when it dies, you put 2 servants with a total cost 2 or less each from your hand into your field. So that's pretty cool, I think. And so far from what we've looked at, that's just the Pentachi so far. But as still having a 5 cost 2000, 2000 that also keeps populating your field with 2 more servants possibly could prove to be a pretty decent effect. Next we have Greedy Vase. It's a 4 cost 2000 attack, 4000 defense. So if you need to, this works really well in reverse position. Whenever this card switches, draw a card. So whenever you change it from reverse to non-reverse. So you can do that if you want to. It works really well if you play him in reverse position to defend against stuff, then switch him back into attack position to start attacking things, or vice versa, however you want to choose it. So you get to get a free card draw with decent stats. And next is Usamaru. So this is a 3 cost, 2000, 1000. Enter the field, draw a card. So pretty vanilla, but I really like the draw power. And having 2000 attack for 3 cost isn't too bad. And so I run 4 of them. I forgot I ran 4 of them. I thought 3 for some reason. Maybe I would switch that to 3. But, you know, it works pretty well. And lastly is Banan, Source of Greed. Bamanan, Source of Greed. 7 cost. So I really like these 7 costs for late game. It's 4000, 4000, like my mono orange deck. With double corrupt, enter the effect, put up to 2 cards from your hand face down into an allied orb zone. So once again, helping with just making it so you don't die, stalling out. And you get to choose the cards. So if you have cards with corrupt, that is really strong effect, because you get to play those cards for free once they come back out. And yeah, so that's all of them. As you can see, probably the one that you might want to switch out would be the Split Eagle. It's just cool to have when I have Pentachi in my hand, but yeah, I probably should switch that out. But overall, so that's the mono yellow deck. Once again, similar to the mono orange deck, everything in here is pretty easily accessible to buy or pull in packs, with the exception of a couple of the casters. So you get the basic idea of it is basically draw power, beefing up your servants, and also populating the orb zone. So it's got 3 simultaneous effects going on. If you want, you can concentrate on one of those effects specifically, or you can do what I did and spread out over all of them. Obviously, this is going to boil down the effects a lot when I combine it into the dual color deck next week. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts of this deck, especially compared to last week's deck, and I'll see you guys next week.